right, so welcome everybody to the December, holy cow, it's December. December's It Factor. We have Dan Huff, who's AVP for Network Infrastructure at Citi. So welcome, Dan. Dan is also a Collin College alumni. So we're always excited to have Dan on board. He's been at our career fairs. So thank you for being a great Collin College partner.
Absolutely.
So if I can start by having you just tell me about yourself and the work that you currently do.
Sure. So, hey everybody, my name's Dan Huff. I serve as Vice President Network Operations at Citi. In that role, I manage the network operations team at Citi. So I have a group of about 25 individuals right now that are on my team, and they keep that giant Citi network up and running. I'm involved in day-to-day operations, talent acquisition, hiring for the team, and doing my best to be there for my team and help them out and help them be successful at their career at Citi. So glad to be here. As Dr. Lewis pointed out, I did graduate from Collin College a long time ago with my Associates of Applied Science degree in computer networking, and learned a lot there. So if it wasn't for Collin College, I wouldn't be here where I'm at today. So glad to be here and look forward to speaking to everybody.
All right, thanks. And as y'all might have heard, Dan does hiring. So keep that in mind. I know y'all have hired a few Collin College students, which is awesome. So what was your career plan growing up? What did you want to be when you grew up?
So growing up, I really didn't know what I was going to do. I was a computer nerd, still am a computer nerd, but, growing up, I always had my head in a computer. I built my first computer, back when I was 9 years old. I got all the pieces together, put it together, loaded an operating system on it. I was always playing video games, so I really didn't know what I wanted to do. Probably something with computers, something with technology, but it really wasn't clear. I started off at Collin College. I was kind of maybe looking at being an electrical engineer, and going down that path. I ran into one of the professors, Mike Harsh, and in a computer repair class, and he said, "Hey Dan, what do you want to do?" I was like, "I don't know, maybe this electrical engineering thing." And he's like, "Hey, have you heard about this Cisco Academy?" I have no idea what you're talking about. He's like, "Why don't you take a Cisco class?" So I took one of his Cisco classes. I took all of the Cisco classes. Later, over the next year or so, got my CCNA, got my CCNP. And then I started looking towards the networking route. But, starting off, it wasn't clear. Something with computers, and, that was about it.
So what was it about networking that got you hooked?
So networking was one technology that I really liked. It really interested me. It was somewhat easy for me to get into and pick up and understand. And then once I got into it and, getting into those Cisco classes and connecting all the switches and routers and hooking everything up. And then when it didn't work, had to figure out why it didn't work and, fixing it. And I thought it was really neat where, we have this internet, this huge network that everybody uses every day. And it really fascinated me how one computer here could talk to another computer on the opposite side of the world. So I was trying to simulate that in the Cisco lab, and it's just something that really got a hold of me, and I kept running with it, and here I am today, overseeing the network operations team at Citi. So it's been good. It's been good.
And so thinking about where you started and where you are now, how has your career changed over time?
Sure. So, Yeah, getting out of college, trying to find that first corporate job, that was a little difficult. It was a little difficult. Of course, a lot of companies want all this experience and some very unique skill sets for some of these roles. So I struggled trying to find that perfect networking job that I was looking for. So yeah, of course, had to pay bills. So I started off doing some help desk work, and then that evolved into going into cybersecurity. Prior to joining Citi, I spent 15 years at McAfee. They're, at the time, a large cybersecurity company. And I worked in their division where I was working with other large businesses, helping them secure their networks and their endpoint. So it really wasn't, applying my Cisco knowledge every single day, but I was able to use that to help support some of the network security solutions that McAfee offered. I was in a technical role for half the time that I was at McAfee, and then the other half of the time later on, I decided I wanted to do something a little different as far as how I was contributing. So there's an opportunity that came up to where I could be a lead for a team of about 60 cybersecurity engineers. So I got to actually move into a role to where now I was managing a large team of individuals that was doing the same thing I had been doing the prior 7 years. In that role, not only did I, work with managing that team and managing the day-to-day operations of the team, but I started getting involved in talent acquisition and hiring people. And how do I go about as a manager finding the right person with the right skill set that's going to fit perfectly within my team?
Mhm.
And then the last 3 years at McAfee, I spent in as a manager of talent acquisitions for the entire customer success group for the Americas. So I not only was hiring and developing individuals in our Plano, Texas office, but also had a group in Argentina and another group in Colombia. So, even though I wasn't local to those areas, I was working on hiring individuals and onboarding them in those roles. And then, an opportunity came up at Citi. Had the opportunity to kind of step away from security for a little while, get back into networking. So I took that opportunity. I've been here with Citi, about a year and a half or so.
That's awesome. I think it's always great to kind of see where we all start and where you would go, and kind of it's never a linear path, I don't think.
Right,
Right?
right.
Yep.
Trust me, if you asked me, 20 years ago, if I was going to be, hiring people or, going out to colleges, talking to individuals that, may be interested in working in technology, I was like, no, that's not me. I'm a fixer. I'm here to fix computer issues and technical issues, but here I am. So.
Awesome. So going back a bit, you said your first job was in help desk. What was it like trying to get that first job, and like what advice would you have?
Sure. So, nowadays it's a little bit, I believe companies are a little bit more flexible as far as work experience. In my time, especially for a network engineer or a network administrator type of role, companies wanted years and years and years of experience. So, I quickly realized that. And, I decided, hey, I'm going to have to get some experience. It may not be the thing I really want to do, right? It may not be my ultimate goal, but I'm going to do a few things and see where those paths take me. At very least, to get some experience and to add to my resume, to build that resume, to build that brand, where I can then use that to hopefully pivot to the direction that I really want to go in. With my team, I'm a little different as far as hiring goes. For a lot of my positions, I don't require experience. I don't require a degree. I don't require, you have any working in a network operations center or anything like that. What I do require is certain skill sets and certain knowledge, and then I'll build upon the rest, and my team will get you where you need to be. So yeah.
So when you're looking at candidates, what stands out to you? What makes you think, oh, hey, I want to interview this person and potentially hire them?
Sure. So in the most common role that I hire is the network analyst role. There's really two buckets that I'm evaluating. So one bucket, if you will, is going to be, is that individual motivated? Do they really want to work here? Do you really want to get your hands dirty in networking and work on one of the world's largest private networks that we have at City? So lots of energy, lots of motivation. It takes a lot of discipline to sit down and learn this giant network that my team works on every single day. So that's a key thing that I'm looking for on the non-technical side. On the technical side, it's more CCNA level knowledge. So the majority of my team is, I would say at least half of my team would be a solid CCNA level knowledge. I'm not talking about having the certification. I'm talking about actually knowing all the content that's covered in that CCNA. The rest of my team is CCNP and above level of knowledge. So that CCNA level knowledge, that is a technical requirement that I do look hard at. But if you got that, even if you don't have any work experience, the team and myself are gonna bring you up to where you need to be. I've hired individuals that, one day they were a bartender and the next day they're a network analyst and they got their CCNA literally overnight. I've had another individual that worked in one of the state correctional facilities, and then I hired him on. He's got his CCNA, and both of them are doing wonderful. So, I'm a little different. There's a lot of companies out there and a lot of roles, that are going to require a lot of work experience. Just understand, sometimes you may have to take a junior role, get that experience, get that knowledge, then that's going to help you pivot and go to the next step. And then once you're at that next step, you'll be able to keep climbing and going wherever you want to go.
So once you get people in the door in those roles, what are some of those non-technical skills that make them successful?
Sure. So, I have a decent sized team. We work in a very fast-paced environment. It's very busy in the command center and on the team. We have to be able to communicate. Effective communication, regular communication is required, right? So, especially when there's something big that happens, if there's some type of outage or some type of impact to the network that's causing impact to the business, we've got to be talking. Even though my role is not actually troubleshooting network issues, when I'm there with the team, there's one person looking at this and one person looking at this and three other individuals looking at another part of the network. They're all communicating real time. They're all talking. You've got to be able to talk. You got to be able to effectively communicate. You've got to be able to think outside the box, right? There's going to be times where, 9 times out of 10, when you see this type of issue, exactly what's going to be done to fix it. But there's that one time where that normal thing that fixes it doesn't fix it. So you got to be able to step back and say, okay, this is different. What else can I do? How can I look at? How can I take a different approach? And then situational awareness. You know, we all work on a live production network that moves trillions of dollars a day. You have to be conscious of the actions that you're taking. You know, on certain environments, you really can't make mistakes. So you really have to be aware of what's going on, what you're doing, how you're doing it. And if you're not sure, if there's any doubts, you got to be able to raise a hand, ask, and again, communicate.
Great tip. We had a question from a student. What are, I guess, you know, there's a lot of different places to work. We can work nonprofit, corporates, you know, what are some of those downsides working for a large corporation, or challenges, I guess I should say?
Sure. So, you know, there were some, I guess you could say maybe challenges or interesting things that I ran into when I left McAfee. McAfee was you know, 7,500 employees. I now work at Citi that has over 220,000 employees globally. You know, working for a small company, you do have some benefits of being able to maybe change direction on certain things quicker, make quicker decisions. You know, because it's just, you know, the size of the company, and you know, and it's also the nature of the business. You know, working for a bank, because at the heart, Citi is a bank, but it's more of a technology company than a bank. But being, you know, working with any financial institution, you have to deal with, you know, government regulations and compliances, and you know, sometimes you can't, you know, move as quick as you'd want to move, or be able to say, okay, this direction we're going, maybe we realize that ain't the best direction, let's go this way real quick. Well, you can't do that overnight. You know, you have to take baby steps to get there. Whether, you know, where if it was a smaller company, you know, they say, hey, let's do it, let's go, we can go. So that's a little bit of a challenge. The other challenge I ran into was, you know, back at McAfee, again, smaller company, I'd been there a long time. You know, I didn't know everybody, but I knew a good group of people, especially in the Plano office. So if anybody come up to you and ask me, hey, Dan, who could help me with this? You know, if I couldn't help them, I gave them a name, I gave them a phone number. I'd walk them over to their desk. I knew where they sit. With Citi, a little different. It's just so much bigger, right? So it took me a while to figure out who's who and what does what. And, you know, I've been there over a year, and I'm still learning what different people do and what different groups do and whatnot. But yeah, you know, that was a little challenging for me.
Yeah, thanks. I'm gonna hand it over to Nora for a couple questions for you.
Sure. Nora,
I don't think your audio is working, Nora. See if your little button on your headset.
Is that better?
Yep.
Yes.
Ah, hi, Dan.
Hi, Nora.
I'm Nora. I've taken the liberty of looking at your LinkedIn and your resume, and I'm very impressed. And it's so inspiring for our students, because many of them are in where you were many years ago. And my question is, when do you know when to move on?
That's a great question.
When do you know that?
That's a great question. So, you know, it's hard. It's hard, and it's easy looking back to say, yeah, maybe I should have done something different, or maybe I should have, you know, moved to a different role. For myself, I knew it was time to move on when I was at McAfee, and I was in a situation to where I kind of hit a ceiling in my group, and I, you know, became to realize, hey, the next step for me and my chosen path where I was at was, well, I had to wait for this other person to retire. And that, yeah, that was it. It was either do that or completely shift what I've been doing and take on a completely different role with a completely different organization with McAfee. Uh, I enjoyed working there. I worked with a lot of great people, but I had to realize that, unless something major changed within my group, it was going to be very difficult for me to take that next step on where I wanted to go. So that's when I casually was looking around, and a couple of managers over at City reached out to me, and we had a good conversation, and I knew that this next step was not necessarily a promotion for me, but it was, I'm moving to a place to where it had many opportunities. When I was going through that interview process at City, every one of the managers and senior leaders I spoke with and interviewed with, they all echoed opportunities. So I couldn't pass that up. I couldn't find those opportunities where I was at McAfee. So, that's why I made the decision. But now looking back, I was like, you know what? Why didn't I do that 7 years ago? Right? It's easy to do that though. It's easy to look back and like, shoot, I should have maybe moved quicker. Having said that, I would also caution everyone, you don't want to jump all around and keep jumping to different places. You do want to at least settle in somewhere, at very least for a short amount of time. I always tell individuals, if you're moving within a different role within the same company, stay there 1 year, right? Stay in that new role that you're moving into in the same company just 1 year. Mm-hmm. Get a good feeling for it. Sometimes it takes many months just to get settled in. Mm-hmm. And then make the decision, if it's not right for you, or if you want to do something different. If you're going from company to company, I usually try to encourage people to stay there at least 2 years, unless there's something, that's drastically impacting, your work life or your personal situation. Stay there at least a couple of years. But I know nowadays, especially in the last few years, it's a very common thing to really, almost every 6 to 8 months be moving to different companies. There's a lot of people, chasing that extra money or whatever that entices them. But sometimes it's not always greener on the other side. So that was my thinking, and that's what happened, to me.
As a follow-up to what you just said, you mentioned City reached out to you. To what extent being on LinkedIn or having a network worked in your favor? What do you mean by they reached out to you?
So I had expressed interest in the role that I was initially in, through LinkedIn. Mm-hmm. And then it wasn't an HR recruiter that reached out to me. It was actually one of the hiring managers that reached out to me directly.
Wow.
And we talked a little bit, and then of course I talked to HR recruiting, and I talked to several other managers and senior leaders throughout the interview process. I didn't get that opportunity through somebody that I knew on LinkedIn or through my network at LinkedIn. However, just because that didn't work out for me, I know it works out for many others, and I've been able to hire individuals that someone connected with me a year ago and they knew somebody, and then maybe I post something and then word gets around and then they find me and I end up hiring them. So it's definitely a great recruiting tool, and in a way to really communicate Here's what I'm looking for, or say, hey, I just got laid off and I'm looking for a job, and be able to meet those two needs.
Excellent. And I think it gets through to all of the students currently on the online here, that the importance of putting yourself out there. There are certain things you've said that there's an element of risk taking, right?
Absolutely.
Jumping from one position, whether you've been there a year or two, is a known quantity, but whenever you feel it's time to jump, it's better to do it when you still have a job, right? So you can move on and don't burn any bridges. So the interpersonal skills, and to do it in such a way that can speak well for you, right?
Absolutely. Totally agree.
Tara?
Sure. Like, now, let me think of something now.
Well, no, this is great, because we've been talking to students about LinkedIn. Okay.
Mhm.
They think, well, I don't have anything to put there. What they bring to the table, as you indicated, is their education, their skill set, their willingness, their motivation, their ambition, their reliability, right? Interpersonal skills and communication. That's what I keep hearing you say. And
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Everybody in the workforce, whether you're working or not working, whether you've never, had a real full-time job or not, you should still have a LinkedIn profile. You should have a LinkedIn profile. Find a good picture of yourself, professional as possible. And even if you don't have a lot to say about work experience or things like that, you can talk about some of the projects you've worked on. You can talk about some of the projects where it's in a team environment, you had to work with others to accomplish this thing. Even if it was purely academic, it still talks to what you can do, some of the experiences you have. And I would also encourage everybody, have a mission statement there. What do you want to do? What do you want to do short term? What do you want to do long term? And you may not really know. I started off wanting to be an electrical engineer. What I'm doing now has absolutely nothing to do with electrical engineering whatsoever. But even if you have a kind of an idea on what you want to do, or if you want to be in technology, what kind of technology you might want to work with, or you're at very least interested in, talk about that. Because me as a hiring manager, I looked at LinkedIn profiles every single day, and I'm trying to get an idea of what's this person about, what are they looking for, does that maybe align with what I'm looking for, and if it's a maybe, then hey, I want to talk to that person and then find out.
I have a question for you regarding certifications. You mentioned that you will hire people with or without them. The main important thing is that they have an understanding, and besides just memorization of facts and things, right? To what extent can a certificate, CompTIA Plus, that kind of thing, will be instrumental in someone being able to move forward in their career once they reach? Is it a way to formalize their experience, or how do you see certificates in someone with no experience, or when they have 3 to 5 years experience? I would imagine it's different, right?
Sure, it definitely can be. So for somebody that has no experience, no work related experience in doing what that next job that they really want, those don't align. If you have some certification, at very least, that says, hey, hopefully you studied hard, you learned this content, and you know it, and then you were able to pass, sometimes very, very difficult exams to get that certification. So they are good.
Mhm.
However, I will also add this, maybe a negative side to it, or maybe some insight to behind certifications is, it's not getting the piece of paper. The getting that certification, getting that piece of paper to hang on your wall or what have you, that feels good, and you've earned that. And that helps you feel good. Most importantly is not that you have that piece of paper, but you know that content.
Mhm.
Because there's going to be hiring managers that are going to say, oh, you got a CCNA. I got a CCNA too. And so now we're going to really find out if you know what was on that CCNA, if you actually spend a lot of time studying, you spend a lot of time, working with some of these concepts and actually knowing it, or did you spend all your time working really hard to pass that test? And that is something that unfortunately I run into very often, is candidates that they have that certification, and for Cisco you got that CSCO number, and you can look it up and prove that I have that certification. That's all good. I'll talk to them for about 15 minutes on some technical things, and then I'll learn very quickly. Do you really know the content that was covered in that certification, or did you spend a lot of time to be successful in passing that test? And if you really don't know the content, that doesn't help me. I personally would much rather you not have that certification. Because when you do have that certification, there can be a sense of an expectation of where you're at. And some hiring managers, like myself, will figure that out. Some hiring managers are not technical at all. And that's fine. However, there every once in a while, especially if you're interviewing for a technical role, whether it's the hiring manager or maybe somebody else on their team that is very technical, that has those certifications, they're going to want to test you, right? They're gonna give you a litmus test to see, where are you at? Did you maybe know it one day and you forgot it all? Or did you spend a lot of time studying for the test, but not actually understanding the content?
Okay.
So it's two sides. It's two sides, but I will tell you, I'll go back to using the Cisco Networking Academy as an example, but this could be any class or any program for any type of certification. If you go through that program, go get the certification, right? I know a lot of these certifications, they can be expensive, but if you go through that program, you not only want to apply that knowledge in a job, go get the certification, right?
So Dan, what are some technical questions that a student might be asked in an interview?
Like for one of my network analyst roles, or
just examples of things you've been asked?
So it really varies. So back at McAfee, I was looking for individuals that had some type of knowledge in cybersecurity. And cybersecurity itself, that's very broad, right? There's many different roads you can take within cybersecurity. But I was looking for not a lot of security related things. I was looking for the foundations, right? So I would ask them about different systems, different operating systems, how those operating systems worked, how not necessarily anything about any type of McAfee solution, but I would ask them about some general application things. If you had this application that wasn't working, or is throwing this error, or is doing this weird thing, how would you troubleshoot it? You know, so that there's going to be some questions around, okay, fundamentally, what do you know, what don't you know about, you know, whether that's systems or operating systems, or, you know, in my case, networks and network devices. And then, you know, there could be some times where I may dabble a little bit into more specific things. So, you know, if we're talking about a cybersecurity engineer or maybe a SOC analyst, I'm going to be asking some questions about malware and maybe threats, and, you know, what are some viruses and threats that you've heard about recently? What do you know about it? You know, how do you stay up to date on, you know, threats and things like that? Now, on the networking side, I'm asking more about, you know, routing and switching, and, you know, again, nothing too crazy, nothing too in depth usually, but you know, really just trying to get a feel, where's the foundation with that individual as far as their technical knowledge, and is that foundation at a place to where I can quickly build upon it? You know, if somebody's like, you know, very green, but they got a solid foundation, you know, it might take me, you know, 3 or 4 months to build up to where, you know, maybe I wish they would be day one, but they have everything else. So I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna make that investment. Both at McAfee and City, I'm real big at investing in individuals. We take months of training and learning, and, you know, building up that individual's knowledge so they can be successful. It takes, you know, time and money to do that, but it pays off long term. I've never been a advocate for throwing somebody in the fire, you know, the first couple of weeks. I think that's a, you know, a horrible idea. I know some people may think it's a good idea, but I think it's a horrible idea. You know, give that individual build a solid foundation on what they come in the door with, and then work on building them up, invest up front, and it's going to pay off long term. So that's my thinking behind it.
We've been asked, for those students that are interested in penetration testing, that seems to be very specific, right? At what point in their career, or what kind of jobs will require that they have this kind of skill, and how would they go about obtaining it if they don't have experience? Is it internships? Is it something down the line that they accumulate over time? How would you answer that question?
So pen testing is a very specific role, right? Mm-hmm. You know, and there's lots of opportunities out there. Normally that is not like an entry-level role. Mm-hmm. You know, I personally would say it would be very rare that somebody, you know, fresh out of college is gonna go be a pen tester day one. I'm sure it happens, but yeah, you know, that's not a common thing. That's more of a senior role for various reasons. But yeah, you know, as far as how to get there, you know, I know it has its wow, what's the word I'm looking for? It is a very desirable role, right? So, you know, you're that good guy acting like a bad guy, trying to break into a network, trying to compromise a system, trying to gather data, and you're going through this exercise to actually protect the company that you work for. Yeah, you know, to show them, hey, if I was a bad person, you know, this system's vulnerable, or I could get to this gold mine of data. So now we need to protect it. Now we need to do all these things to secure and to fill those holes. So if a bad person does want to get in, hopefully they won't be successful. So it's a very cool role. But I would encourage individuals, if that is your long-term goal, you're going to have to know a lot about everything. You're going to have to know operating systems backwards and forwards. You're not just going to need to know Windows. You're not just going to need to know Linux. You're going to need to know them both, multiple versions of them inside and out, not just a high level overview. You're going to need to know how the kernels work and how the hardware works. And you're going to have intimate knowledge of those systems and operating systems. You're also going to have intimate knowledge of networks.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a big misnomer in the cybersecurity world is, you can, take all these classes in cybersecurity and get these certifications. I've talked to individuals that have their Security Plus, their ethical hacker certification, even a few that have that licensed pen tester certification. They got all these cool security certifications and they know little to nothing about networks.
Mm-hmm.
And when you think about as a pen tester, one of the most common ways to get into a system is going to be through some network, or once you're in on a system, if you want to transverse to other systems, you're going over a network. You need to know networking. So that's why I tell everybody, hey, cybersecurity is a great field. Do not solely focus on security. That's a big part of it. You better know networks. And that's a whole nother monster.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to know both to be, in my opinion, to be very successful in that field, especially if you're going to be in some type of role as a pen tester. I would also caution everybody, make sure what you're doing is for educational purposes. Don't get yourself in trouble. I've heard lots of stories where we get into pen testing, you find this really cool tool and you click a few buttons and maybe it can, compromise this system or something like that. Yes, you will get in trouble for that. So to keep it in-house, play with it on your own systems in a closed environment, be smart about it. Because if you get in trouble doing that, you can almost guarantee it's going to be extremely difficult finding an actual job afterwards. So in that field. So, but it is very cool. It's a very cool field. Is a big need for it too, but don't have the notion that I'm just going to jump right into being a pen tester right out of college. I'm sure it's happened, but it's not a common thing. You're going to have to maybe look at being a SOC analyst and maybe doing some analysis of threats and understanding lots of different things to build upon your knowledge to finally get to that point to where you are an efficient pen tester.
Yes, I've been looking at CyberSeek. We use this to educate students about the occupations they're considering and what would it take, what kind of skills, concrete skill set, knowledge base they would have to possess. And sure enough, CyberSeek indicates that pen testers, it's a mid-level occupation. It would take you the top skills that they say they require, as you indicated: network, information security, Linux, a lot of coding, Python, Java, information systems, software development, project management. So it's definitely not an entry level, but I think they need to start somewhere, right?
For sure. And that's why, a lot of individuals in security, I didn't take this route, but working in a security operations center, that gives you visibility into some of it. But again, that's going to give you a little piece. You want to branch out. You want to get, you want to be in front of lots of different things in regards to security, to really build upon your knowledge. So when you're interviewing for a pen tester role, you'll be able to talk to all those things.
So Dan, how do you stay on top of everything? I mean, there's so much technology and so many things coming out all the time. I mean, I'm not in IT. I'm just kind of on the outside. And I mean, I've had the last 2 years I've been here at Colin, I still don't feel like I have a grasp on things. So how do you keep up with everything?
Yeah, it's difficult, regardless on what field in technology you specialize in or working at the moment. Everything in technology is always changing, and there's new things. And once you get a really good grasp of that new thing, then that thing changes. Then you got to figure what changed and how it works differently. So it is difficult. Lots of different ways. I don't have my head in technology as much as I used to, right? But every once in a while, I'll scour the internet, maybe look at some security sites that talk about latest threats or recent hacks or breaches. It still interests me. But it kind of talks about what's going on right now. There's a lot of things that we see in the news, but unless it's a major breach or even major breaches, you don't really get to know too much about the technology used. So use the internet to get a little bit deeper knowledge on some of those things, and research from some of the reading that you've done. Leverage others. There's lots of little committees and groups out there that meet on a regular basis and that talk about various types of technologies. In a work environment, it's I learn a lot from my team. So they're all doing the work, but I learn a lot, from others on what they're working on, how this works, the issues they run into. It's just, making yourself available and saying, hey, I'm interested. I want to learn this. And even if it's just a little here or a little there, you read a couple of articles, on one site one day. There's not one key thing. Is what I'm getting at. There's not one key thing that is my go-to thing to learn about new technologies. I try to get information from multiple sources, and I don't stay on top of things as I used to. I don't know about the latest and greatest this or that, but being a part of these groups and some of the committees that I attend over at Collin College, I get to hear from others. I get to hear from others that do have their head in it every single day, and get to hear what they're seeing. And I take away from all their time and energy that they spent learning these things. So a lot of it's from others. Whether that's somebody that wrote an article, or listening to a podcast, or attending some meeting or committee with a group of like-minded individuals talking about some technology.
That's a great way to start your network, right? Is just talk to people that have something in common with you and say, hey, what did you read lately? Or, I think that's a great tip. I think here at Collin, you're in a class, you've got 29 other people you can talk to about this stuff. So
right.
that's a great resource for sure.
Right.
What, thinking back to your college days, I know for us it's been a while, but what advice would you have for your younger self?
Oh boy. That's a great question. I mean, I spent a lot of time studying. I was fortunate enough to have really good professors. I spent lots of days and nights in those Cisco labs, learning things. I don't know. I don't know if I would really really change anything other than there were some times where I took some very hard classes. They weren't technology classes, believe it or not. There were some there's a few calculus classes out there and a few others that that was really difficult for me. And there's multiple times where I was like, you know what, I gotta drop this class. It'd be so easy to drop this class. This is just really difficult for me to understand. And I was having a hard time with it, and I couldn't find anybody to help me. But you have to be focused, you have to be motivated, you have to stay motivated. Understand that when you're going through that hard thing, when you're taking that hard class, or you're dealing with that super difficult exam, or whatever that very difficult thing is that is stressing you, that is frustrating you, that is like, what, it's so easy to quit. It's so easy to walk out that door. It's so easy to just step away from it. Stay focused, go through it. It ain't gonna be fun, but go through it. Be successful at the end. If you stay motivated and you stay focused, you will be successful. And then you can step back and say, wow, I don't want to do that again, maybe. That was really hard, but guess what? If I had to do it again, if a similar situation came up, that next hard class or that next very difficult exam I got to take, it ain't going to be that bad, right? It's not going to be as bad. You'll even do better. And who knows, one day you may become the expert in that field. The super quick story, the first class I took at Collin College was a physics class, and it was a 16-week accelerated physics class. I've never took physics in high school, but I was like, hey, this sounds very challenging. So I'm going to take this very challenging class, my first class, over the summer right out of high school. Maybe not the greatest idea, but I was challenging myself. I like challenging myself. That was a difficult class for me. Some of the exams, I would sit in that exam room for 3-4 hours to take some of these exams. They were pretty good. They were very lengthy. Passed a class with a B, and I was like, okay, I did that really hard thing and I made it through it. I didn't get the A, but I did okay. So I think I can handle, the rest that's going to come at me. That may not, that I didn't perceive to be very hard. Some of those other classes, and then, I got to this. I think that helped me, because when I got into the Cisco program, that can be a very difficult thing for certain people. Some people pick it up really easy. Some people struggle with it extremely hard. But I felt like I had already conditioned myself through dealing with very difficult, hard to understand concepts and all this crazy physics stuff. Well, I could do that, and I felt good about that. Now I think I can tackle, what else? What else do you got? I'm going to try to tackle it. And I ended up doing pretty well when I graduated. So that would be the advice I give to me, is just keep going, stay focused, don't shy away if something gets really hard, because it can pay off. And trust me, that physics class now looks like riding a bike compared to some of the things I've dealt with in my career. So those are peanuts compared to some of the crazy situations I've been in. But it's good. It's good to condition yourself in those stressful situations and be able to kind of move through it.
Yeah, I agree. It's never fun when you're in the middle of it, right? You're like, holy crap, how am I going to get through this? But
right.
Yep. And then do you have a little extra time to answer a couple more questions?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay, great. So one of our students asked about, since the pandemic, a lot of IT positions went remote and hybrid. Do you think most most positions are going to be hybrid and remote. Like they'll continue that. Do you, where do you see that trend going?
Absolutely. So there was, I think there was a, moment of clarity with some, lots of companies, because the old way of thinking was if I didn't have my people in an office, work wasn't going to get done, or the quality of the work wasn't going to be that good, or I can't keep eyes on what's going on and what everybody's doing. A lot of companies, had that way of thinking, but with the whole pandemic situation, for myself, I was still at McAfee. We went from in office 100% of the time to being remote 100% of the time, and we stayed remote. Actually, McAfee is still 100% remote, but when I left, I walked in to gather my things to leave, and I was one of two people in that entire office, and the other person was a security guard. So companies realize that we have the technology to be remote and be effective. We have this Zoom thing. We have all these other applications that we can use to collaborate real time. We can actually pick up a phone and call people, and yes, it's not the same thing as walking over to somebody's desk and having that face-to-face conversation. But at the same time, we can still be effective. And we have the tools to do that, and we can do it securely. And a lot of companies did that. Now, some companies are saying, hey, we're going to stay remote, or there's big groups of employees within those companies that say, hey, you don't got to come in. You're good. You're effective. There's no lack of productivity. There's no lack of quality. Some studies even found that employees were more productive staying remote. And I get that. At the same time, my personal preference, I like the hybrid. Me in the role that I'm in, where I'm responsible for leading and managing a group of high performing individuals, I need to see them face to face. I would not want to do the job that I'm doing right now being 100% remote. That's just me personally. Now, could I still do it? Yeah. Would I be as effective? In my opinion, I wouldn't be. Would my team be as effective? Most likely, but there's a disconnect there. So I go in the office, at least 2 to 3 days a week, just to see the team. And I allow my team to be remote 50% of the time. So we have a little thing set up where 1 week you're in the office, the next week, if you don't want to be in the office, you can work remote all week. But I do expect them to be in the office when they're supposed to be in the office, because not only for myself, but for everybody else. The work that we do, I mentioned lots of communication goes on. We have lots of technologies we can communicate through. But that real-time communication, in-person, face-to-face communication, that is different.
Yeah.
It is different.
Yeah.
So that's how I work. City as a whole, they're on board with a hybrid work environment globally. So I believe nowadays we really need to offer that flexibility. Maybe there's some positions that can be 100% remote. Maybe you go in the office once or twice a year, and that works out perfectly. That's, hey, if it works, it works. But at the same time, I think it would be better if people were together a little bit more than being, 100% or 99% remote. But having that flexibility, having that work-life balance,
Mhm.
saving time on the drive to work and the drive back. I don't miss the traffic when I'm working from home, save a little gas. So yeah, I also enjoy it.
I would think that having an entry-level job and being completely remote would be not ideal, right?
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. Even my team is hybrid. I do require new hires to be in the office every day for the first 4 to 6 weeks.
I would imagine.
And after that, I still would encourage them come in as much as they like. But I'm more flexible at that point. We do a lot of training. Most of the training's in person. A lot of the training is them right next to somebody, for 8, 10, 12 hours a day at a time. You really can't do that remotely.
Yeah, I would imagine.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of it's dependent on the companies or management or the type of role.
And their level of experience.
And level of experience.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And if they did not do well in an online class exclusively, the last thing they want is remote 100% entry level.
Right.
So know yourself, right?
Right. Absolutely.
Right. Yeah.
Absolutely. So some people don't work well remote.
Mhm.
For those individuals, hey, figure that out. And in the meantime, be in the office. But you gotta be self-aware, and be able to say, this ain't the best environment for me. And if I was here every day by myself, I get lonely. I want to see my team. I want to talk about the Dallas Cowboys. I want to have, work conversations and unrelated conversations with the team. So
yeah, I think that working remotely takes away that spontaneity sometimes. I know I miss that, when we were in lockdown. I couldn't just yell across the hall at somebody, right? Like, or
right.
Have some random conversation. It's not quite the same. But
absolutely.
Yeah. So we got I want to ask you one last question. I always like to ask at the end of an factor. Money is no object. What would be your alternative career?
Oh man, I don't know if I can pick one. I'd have to pick 3, I guess. So I like cooking. I like cooking a lot. If money was not an option, I would open my own restaurant. Never worked in a restaurant. Wouldn't even know where to start. I really like cooking. I like other people enjoying, the food I make. So maybe a restaurant. I live north of the Metroplex, about an hour or so. I have a little farm here. So I would like, money was not an option. Maybe I'd be a full-time farmer and, have more animals and grow the farm and, spend time doing that. So, maybe one of those 2 things.
That sounds good. So thank you so much, Dan, for coming on and talking with us and sharing all of your wisdom. I know we're going to see you again in the future.
Absolutely.
So also for all the students, please look at the chat. We have a survey that we would ask you to fill out just so we can know, what we're doing well, what we can do better. So please take a minute to click on that link and fill out that survey for us. Again, Dan, thank you so much. Look forward to seeing you soon. And yeah.
Oh, good. I really do appreciate the opportunity. Thank you very much, Dr. Lewis and Nora. I really do appreciate it. Sandra, appreciate it. And anytime y'all need anything, whether it's another one of these sessions or anything else from me, don't hesitate to reach out. And I hope everybody here hopefully took away maybe at least one thing that'll help them out, if not now, in the future. And hey, everybody, I'm on LinkedIn. So there's not a lot of Dan Huffs on LinkedIn. So look me up, Dan Huff with Citi, and feel free to connect with me there. And if there's any questions that you have, feel free to message me, and maybe our paths will cross again. So thanks everybody. I hope you all have a good evening.